Welcome to class. I'm Trevor, and I post D&D videos every week, generally on Wednesdays. I tend to focus on homebrew and tips and tricks for DMs and players. In this new series, I'm taking a page out of Riker from the Cleric Corners book, so if you haven't checked out his channel, I'd highly recommend it. I want to talk about inspiration for your next Artificer in a 5e game. Before I jump too quickly into it, I want to talk about how these videos are going to work. I'm going to go through all of the classes over time, and I'm going to talk about how you can use magic cards, magic sets, and characters from Magic's lore, they may or may not have cards, to get inspiration for the different classes in 5th edition. There's a wealth of world building done from Magic the Gathering, and I want to start this series there. If it does well and if there's interest, I might even do other videos like this for not just Magic inspiration, but inspiration from literature or other places. Let's jump into Artificers to start this out. Artificers is the newest class. They were published in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. I guess they were originally published in Eberron, but republished in Tasha's. And I have two cards from Magic that really get that Artificer flavor across. And the first one that I want to talk about is Osgir, the Reconstructor. Osgir is from the Strixhaven Commander products, which doesn't really matter when it comes to D&D, obviously. This actually works really well because the Strixhaven book, A Curriculum of Chaos, is coming out right around the time that this video should be going up. Now, Osgir was a student of Lorehold, which is the College of Exploration. Think of Indiana Jones style archaeology. He loved finding magic items and hoarding them for himself. He eventually became a professor or something like that in Lorehold. I basically didn't have a lot to work with other than a couple of paragraphs on one of the articles published about the Strixhaven legends. But his ability mirrors the kind of creation ability that artificers get in 5th edition. He is able to duplicate magic items or artifacts in Magic the Gathering, and I think that works really well. In my head, he'd be a great idea or jumping off point for a Battlesmith style Artificer. So the second card inspiration for Artificers would be the Shattergang brothers. This group of goblins is on Ravnica, and apparently all of the different guilds at different times will ask the Shattergang brothers for help when they need something more nefarious done. Now, the Shattergang brothers, as their typeline suggests, would work really, really well if you're trying to build an alchemist artificer. As you can see, it looks like they're holding essentially fantasy Molotov cocktails, and that is one of the options that an alchemist could come up with. Now, obviously, the legendary creature here is multiple creatures. It is a group of goblins, and it's unlikely a DM would let you play more than one player character, but you could play one character. You could even just use this as a jumping off point for how to have a goblin as an artificer, and there's more on that in a little bit. But I just thought that especially the art, and especially because Ravnica is an existing setting in 5th edition, I think that this would work really well, and it bridged the gap between the Ravnica book and how to play an Artificer specifically in that setting. If you want some more open-ended inspiration for your next Artificer in a 5th edition campaign, I'm going to give you 3 planes to look at from Magic the Gathering. Now, I say planes because some of these locations span multiple sets. The first one is Kaladesh. There's a video that I'll link in the description where when they were spoiling Kaladesh and they were talking about the cards and the aesthetic, where they go into a really deep dive about what this set was. But it is essentially a fantastical, not quite steampunk, they call it aetherpunk, version of India. And it is phenomenally well done. I mean, energy was a really big mechanic in this set. There was an inventor's fair, and this is a more recent artifact-driven set from Magic the Gathering. But this is a very bright, very vibrant, and almost fun form of artifact-driven and creation-driven characters, and there's a lot of beautiful designs. A lot of the designs play into the fact that magic is directly intertwined with machinery on this plane, and it doesn't look like traditional or medieval style machinery. And I really love that about this set and about a lot of the cards from Kaladesh. So there's Kaladesh, there's Aether Revolt. If you want to look for Artificer ideas, or even ideas maybe for homebrew magic items that your Artificer is trying to create, I would strongly suggest looking at Kaladesh. A second plane to keep in mind, sadly, no longer exists, in a way. So, in Magic lore, there was a plane called Mirrodin, and Mirrodin was an entirely artifact plane. I say it no longer exists because it has since been taken over by a group called the Phyrexians, or a race called the Phyrexians, and it is now actually New Phyrexia. But either of these sets, right? So the original Mirrodin set, which was Mirrodin, Darksteel, or Fifth Dawn, or the new set, which was Scars of Mirrodin, Mirrodin Besieged, and New Phyrexia, either of these would work beautifully for looking at characters that are imbued with metal and magic, and you could certainly find ideas for artificers on these planes. And finally, we'll look at Alara. Now, when Alara was coming out, the first set was called Shards of Alara. It was a bunch of different kind of mini planes, and throughout the narrative, they were brought together in an event called the Conflux. But originally, when they were separated, there was one plane called Esper, and the creatures and people on Esper had metal filigree as part of their body. And this is also an incredible way to incorporate an artificer, even if it's not someone who has like metal built into their body, but is someone who's just like working with that kind of filigree metal. I think it'd be a great jumping off point, even if just for artistic inspiration for your next artificer in a 5e game. And finally, some specific characters from Magic's lore that would work for great artificer ideas. The first one is Feldon of the Third Path. I'm going to be honest, I'm no expert in lore that goes back this far, but I do know that Feldon lost his wife in the lore of Magic the Gathering, and he really desperately wanted to bring her back. And he kept creating these metallic replica to try to bring her back, and obviously that was never quite enough. His cane, like Feldon's cane, was actually a card well before Feldon himself was published, which was much more recently. But this character and his struggles and how he tries to use his ability to overcome that, I think could be a really great character motivation or character concept. We also have Urza, Lord Artificer, or Mishra. These, I believe, are brothers. Please no one smite me if I'm incorrect. There's actually a set coming out soon where we're going to go into Magic's past and look at a lot of the events involving these characters. But I know both of them were heavily influenced and heavily dealt with and involved with creating different machinery and metals, and definitely would be great ideas or building blocks for artificer characters. And I think I saved the best for last, but there's a little goblin artificer named Slobad from Mirrodin, and I believe he was poorly treated by his clan. He dealt really well with machinery. I think he helped to fix Bosch, the Iron Golem, but I just think it would be a really cool idea and an unexpected idea to play a goblin artificer. It's actually more common in Magic than it is in 5th edition, or at least based on my expectations of 5th edition, because there are other goblin artificers as well. I mean, like Daretti is a planeswalker goblin artificer that could also work as an idea for an artificer character. But I just like using like kind of race class combinations that are a bit more unexpected, because I think they can lead to really evocative character choices. So let me know what you think. I hope this was useful in at least planting some seeds for how you could play your next artificer. Let me know which of the cards you like the most, or which setting you'd like to explore further. If there's a card or even idea separate from Magic the Gathering altogether that you want to base your next artificer on, let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear it. And if you want to suggest what class I should do next, drop that in the comments too, because I'm really enjoying this video and I'm looking to do more player-focused content to see how that does. So let me know, and as I always say, be safe. Make smart life choices.